Hello and welcome back to another episode of the UnCorporate World. I am your host, Dr. Heidi, and today I have Moxi, my co-host, with me, and Andrea Sedlock from Rukundo International. Hey everyone, how are you today?
Hi.
So
Hi.
Andrea, can you just take a couple minutes, tell our audience a little bit about yourself and how you decided to start Rukundo?
Sure. I actually work full time at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, as a biologist, while also simultaneously serving as the founder and president of Rukundo International, which is a grassroots nonprofit organization. We're working in rural southwestern Uganda. We empower vulnerable children and women mostly through education and economic opportunities. Today, we support more than 1,000 individuals annually. We have not only the school, which is focused on education, but also girls and women's empowerment. We do agriculture, entrepreneurship programs, and also scholarships. And I think what truly makes Rukundo unique is that we really don't like to be called a charity or not a charity alone, because we try to build preserving dignity and community partnerships and long-term opportunities or sustainability into all of our programming. And this year we reached a major milestone. It's our first year that we have a full elementary school. So now we have a full elementary and nursery school all the way up through seventh grade, which is the final year of primary school in Uganda. And then we use that campus as a community center to run outreach to the entire community at large.
Wow. And Mochi, just so you know, I've had the pleasure of working a little bit with Andrea. And first of all, I can just say, I don't know how you balance the two, Andrea, because NIH is its own beast all on its own. And then to run this is just incredible. And the work that I've seen you do firsthand is just amazing. It's so refreshing to be able to stand behind an organization and promote it, because there's so many skeptical people out there that say, oh, you're not truly doing that work there, or the resources are not benefiting those communities. And it's unfortunate we do live in that world where people do run into scams and things like that. But I've been able to see firsthand the amazing work that you do. And I mean, you even get right on the ground. You fly there, you're there with your team. And it's absolutely amazing. But one thing that I've always been curious about, and it's a question I ask a lot of people, and I think having younger co-hosts with me, it's interesting to kind of see where people kind of gravitate towards. When you were in high school, so, Moshi's a little bit younger than that, but some of my other co-hosts are high school, and we're talking to high school students. Was this a path you saw for yourself? Or how did that kind of come about?
I mean, definitely not. I wanted to be a marine biologist for most of my elementary career, or whatever you call it, in elementary school. I've always loved science and I've always loved animals. And I did end up becoming a biologist, but not a marine biologist. I also learned that marine biologists, apparently, it's not like SeaWorld, right? You go and track fish for 7 months on a boat. So it's not really conducive to a lot of lifestyles. So, but then in other ways, my second career choice was social work.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess I've always had a passion for helping other people. So now I get to have a fulfilling career in neuroscience at the NIH, where, I'm literally working every day to help save lives and improve public health. And then simultaneously leading this international nonprofit organization. And the combination, I think, actually makes sense, because science has taught me to think critically, to ask the right questions, to use data to make data-driven decisions, to analyze systems and say what's working, what's not working, how can we make this better? And so those things have really deeply influenced the way that we work at Rukundo.
And I'm saying that's one of the major reasons I love Andrea. I think you were the only one I didn't have to explain to that you need to collect data. to be able to show funders that you're making an impact. And I was like, she gets it.
And it's not easy, honestly, especially, I mean, we're working in a community where these are first generation public school students. Like these parents, public school didn't become available in Uganda until 1997. And a lot of the parents are illiterate. They cannot understand the value of an education. These are not, even people who are highly educated haven't necessarily had a history of making data led decisions at all. And so it was not an easy road to get clean data that you can actually trust. So I get why people, don't put in the effort, but I understood that it was, if we didn't have those systems that we really couldn't get much anywhere. So.
Excellent. Moxi, do you have a question for Andrea?
Yeah. So I was actually wondering, so you know how you were talking about like even though in high school you weren't exactly sure about like what you're doing right now, but like what I guess inspired you to do that work that you do today?
I mean, there are so many things, but I've thought about this a lot, and I think what it boils down to was being a mom. So in 2009, I traveled to Uganda for the first time with my church on what you would call a mission trip, which anyway, but I grew up in Southern West Virginia. So I'm no stranger to what poverty, might look like here in the United States. I'm a first generation college graduate, and I got pregnant my senior year of college. And I went on to get my master's degree, but I relied on what they called then food stamps. I think it's called SNAP today, and other support systems that helped me to finish my degree and build, a stable life for myself and my daughter. And while I was in Uganda, I was able to visit the home. I mean, working in the schools was one thing, but we got to go home with a student. And I ended up in the home of a lady named Emily, and she was also a single mom. And she was raising 5 children in, without electricity, without running water. She worked incredibly long days in fields that did not belong to her just to feed her children. And these systems that I had in the United States that helped me just are non-existent to these women, many of whom are also single moms. But I think what struck me the most, like I don't remember the abject poverty. I remember the joy and the welcome and the gifts that these women gave despite not having a lot materially. And when I was sitting in Emily's home that day, I just remember thinking, this woman has worked just as hard, if not harder than I've ever worked in my life. She loves her children just as fiercely as I love my daughter. And when I looked at her, I just truly, as cliche as it sounds, like I saw myself with the only real difference being the place where we were born. And I couldn't come home and unsee that. So a few years later, Rukundo was born out of that trip and a continued relationship. I kept going back like year after year and working in that school.
And that's really interesting. I feel like the story that you told like really makes me understand why you would be so like passionate about what you're doing right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Andrea, it's really fascinating, and I'm hearing it from my college students as well, and more people are going on to college and then graduating and wanting to get more into philanthropic work. They want to do work that's meaningful and impactful to them. And so, yes, we have the nonprofit world. We also have a ton of social enterprises, for-profit social enterprises that are focused on, doing something more around the UN SDGs. But the challenge becomes, how do we both know, we've both been there, and you still feel it even trying to fund things now. Historically, the nonprofit sector does not yield large salaries, does not yield, the bonuses and all the other things that come along with it. And the reality with the economy where it's at today, we do have to think about like, how do we put our food on our own table and take care of ourselves before we can help others, right?
Yeah.
And so, as I see these high school students and college students going on with great ambitions in mind, the question comes, how do they balance that? How do they, fulfill that feeling of, I only want to be working in passionate fields, but you still need the money on the other side of it? Is there advice there? Is there some balance that they could maybe be striving for to satisfy both things?
Yeah, I mean, I think volunteering maybe is like a natural fit there. So, I
Yeah.
mean, I get that we also have limited time with everything, that we're trying to do in life, but every organization, needs help, whether it's, tutoring or data entry. I mean, there are things that high school students could do, that middle school students can do, that, even people with limited time and, that don't require any money. Also, just increasing visibility. I think the number one way that we have struggled is to break out of my bubble. So how do we reach supporters, that aren't connected to Andrea Sedlock and get them to buy in to what we're doing? So, young people on social media, you can help with spreading the word, creating awareness, making videos, making TikToks. I still need a TikTok person. So if anybody wants to volunteer, things like that.
I need one first. Hold on.
Yeah, right. You're like, you're not taking my network. Yeah, but I think, I think people, sometimes we think of success as like these big, huge milestone things, building a school in Uganda, right? Like not everyone is called to do that. But I need people who can give, 1 to 2 hours a week to make a TikTok. Something that everyone can do is volunteering and just doing your research, on the nonprofits that you're supporting. Like you said, that skepticism is there and it's rightfully earned, but at the same time, I think it's very minor. Like the majority of nonprofits are just like myself, where we're on a shoestring budget. We're so passionate about the work we do, but doing your research to see, you have to have overhead. Like you said, people still need salaries, and this myth that I am a volunteer, but like, it's not sustainable if we're quite honest. So, you need overhead, but you want to see realistic numbers with overhead, like how much of the money is going, so doing your research, when you volunteer, is also, I think, equally important.
Yeah. I love that you say that because, I think that also can help high school students, middle school students. Honestly, let's look at the other side of it. It can beef up your resume, and it makes you, you show that you have more skill sets on the table as we're applying to very competitive spaces these days to even get in. It was funny the other day. I was just curious because Northeastern put out its latest tuition numbers. Oh my God, 100 grand a year now. And they were putting out their acceptance rate, and it's right around 7%. And I said to myself, not that I'm going to date myself, but I said, I wonder what it was when I, as an undergraduate student, we won't say what year, but I was an undergraduate student, I'm wondering what that acceptance rate was. So I went back and I took a look, and it was like 60 something percent.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't even know if I would get into it.
Right.
It's
highly
competitive. And so I think, being able to not only do good, but to volunteer and to get something, I think it's like a win-win. And, this can also help a lot of the college students that I have now. One of the challenges that many of them have is I have a lot of students who are changing career paths. And so they might have worked for the last 10 years in this particular field, but now, for example, might be trying to get into HR, but they can't get a job because no one wants to take that chance and roll that dice. You don't have experience.
Yeah.
So there's another great opportunity. Go do a year volunteering for a nonprofit doing their HR work. It's, again, a win-win. Now you've done it. You didn't get paid for it, but you've done it and you helped out. You got it on your thing. And now you become more competitive in the marketplace as well.
Well, and I think, that's where we've gotten some of our best volunteers, is that exact situation. People wanting to do a pivot and, they need the experience. And I think there is an upside to that because there's a lot of room to do higher level things than you might be allowed to do if you were breaking into a for-profit sector. So, there's a lot of leeway for creativity and, really serving in every capacity of the role, for people who want that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Moxi, do you have another question for Andrea?
Yeah, so in school, the environment often makes it really easy to define our worth strictly by our GPAs or test scores. But when it comes to actually making a difference in the real world, so like textbooks only take us so far. So I guess soft skills, hobbies, and other like personal growth are really big factors in success. So I guess what's one thing that students should focus on besides academics?
I think we touched on it a little bit just now, like volunteering, community service. I think that's something that more and more employers are looking for, to show, that you have something outside of just what you do at school. So I would say volunteering, however and wherever you can. Also learning to connect with people outside of your immediate circle, I think is so incredibly important, and we have more tools to do that today as the world becomes more interconnected. Certainly some of the most important things I've learned in life are from listening to people, whose lives looks very different from mine. But also, like, as a scientist, and this is one of my pet peeves, I think students need to really be intentional about learning to think critically and combat misinformation. So like doing research is not watching videos on YouTube most of the time, although some professionals do have videos on YouTube. But I think we live in a world where social media constantly tells us we aren't enough, we need more to be happy. So just learning to live outside of that noise, outside of those screens, again, being intentional about how we're spending our time and, focusing on real human connections, because oftentimes it's about who you know, not what you've done sometimes. So yeah, so community service and human connection, I think is incredibly important outside of academics.
So one thing I'd like to say for people who are following all of our podcasts to date, we are seeing a major theme emerging, and none of these people know each other. They're all from different sectors. They're all from different industries, backgrounds. We haven't staged it behind the scenes.
Nope.
We're in the same thing. Network, network, network. It's very important to continue growing that network. And I don't think we've had a guest on yet that hasn't brought that point up. And they're not coached.
Definitely not. I can confirm.
So it is really, really important. Moxi, I think you have a game, don't you, that you might like to play with Andrea?
Yeah, let's play a game. So this is a true or false game, and basically I have a couple of prompts, and I will like read out the sentence, and then you should tell me if based on your experience whether it's true or false.
Okay. Ooh, okay.
And you can expand too, Andrea, on your.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to just be true or false if you have more you want to say.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so the first one is anyone can become a leader.
True. Do you want me to expand? I
mean, I think based on like the past conversations, we already kind of know why, but maybe for like some of the other ones, if you have anything to add on, you could definitely add something on.
Sure. I mean, sorry, not for that one. Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, like, I'm a small town girl. I mean, I'm like a Journey song right now. Small town. But like, seriously, I'm from Campbell's Creek, West Virginia. So there is not a better living, breathing example of anyone can become a leader, than me. I mean, I got pregnant my senior year of college. I went on to get a master's degree, all of those things. I certainly never imagined that I would be leading an international nonprofit. So honestly, like anybody can do extraordinary things. I think it's less about brilliance, again, living, breathing example, but more about humility and perseverance. I think people tend to give up. And I think true leaders are often born out of just sticking to it when things get hard, when things are slow, when you're exhausted, when things are challenging, when things aren't going right, which is almost every day when you're starting a business or a nonprofit or any other endeavor worth doing in life. I think it's the perseverance that really separates, people. So if you can do that, and which every human can, then I think you can be a leader.
And well, based on your journey, do you think that failure is necessary for growth?
Absolutely. Yeah. 100% yes.
Yeah, I think sometimes a lot of people are like really afraid to fail, so they won't take the first step to go try out what's new, but that's definitely really important for you to like once you start with something, then you'll have to expand, and obviously through that journey you'll have to go through a lot of mistakes and like things
Yeah.
like that. But eventually, as we can see, it will become a really great success.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was saying, with the last question, even just, sticking to it. Like, I think we're so attuned again, a lot of times because of social media, right? That everything has to be successful and, things are supposed to be easy. And, we only see the highlight reels, right? No one's publicizing all the things, that don't go right, including nonprofits. And I fall into that comparison game myself sometimes if I'm quite honest. So yeah, just keeping at it is really the key.
I just have to chime in too, because this is like my like passion thing. You have to fail. You have to fail.
Absolutely.
If you are not failing, you are not pushing your boundaries enough. You are not getting out of your comfort zone. You're not creating something monumentally different. Failure is where you learn. Okay. If you're just doing the same thing over and over again and you're doing it well, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but you're not, as a human being, going to continue to grow, continue to prosper, continue to push those boundaries. So when you find yourself in that rut and you're like just doing the same thing over and over and it's all going smoothly, I challenge you, do something harder and push yourself till you fail, because that is where you get those moments of learning, and that is where you're going to grow the most to that next step.
I hate to not credit where I learned this, and I can't remember if I read it, if someone told me in person, like I just don't remember. So I apologize if this was you, but someone said to me about donations, getting donations, to count your no's, and that you would be successful when you got 10 no's. And I was like, what? But they were like, if you're not getting no's, you're not asking enough. And so instead of counting,
that was not me, but that's true. I like that.
Like instead of counting how many donations they got, they counted their success by how many times they were told no, because it meant that they were asking enough.
Yeah.
To continue to, get the negative feedback as well. So I thought that was interesting. And it kind of like, I was like, that's challenging. Yeah.
I like that. I do like that.
Yeah. That's I'm sure they said it much more eloquently than how I just explained it, but you get
it was perfect to me.
Okay. Yeah, I really agree with that as well. And I think that's something that I'll keep in mind from now on. Moving on to the next one. So we hear a lot of negativity about how our generation uses technology and screens a lot, but I guess we can also see it being used for global organizing. So do you think that social media can be a force for good?
150% yes. I mean, I hate to say this because this is not a good example, and it's not how it works for most people. For the first 10 years of this organization, until we had a crisis that I could not avoid, I never directly asked a person for money. I built Rukundo from Facebook. Honestly, just talking about it, like Heidi said, Dr. Heidi, flying to Uganda, doing this cool tour every year, showing people, this is what your donations have done. I mean, Dr. Heidi can tell you she donated a goat once. Like, you will get a picture of your goat. You will see the person who got your goat. Like, we're just so transparent in everything we do. And I think people were drawn to that transparency, but also not everyone can travel to Uganda or to any country. Not everyone has that privilege or that ability. And so I think people could see themselves through me. A lot of them, as I said, were personal friends and family. So they knew my background, they knew I wasn't going to lie to them. And so I think, yeah, they were like, okay, like, we're going to do this because we know Andrea, we know her heart. They could care less about Uganda, if I'm quite honest. Like, I'm sorry, I'm brutally honest sometimes, but it's the truth. Like, I think they gave because I was so transparent. And honestly, 10 years, 100% through social media.
Yeah. And I love, Andrea, that sometimes your direct ask is for, we need funds. But then sometimes it's, okay, well, it doesn't really matter if I get the funds or if I get these items. These are really what we need.
Yeah.
And I think that gives people the option, because there are times that, I don't know why, but sometimes I'm more drawn towards purchasing an item or funding an item or getting the goat because my 6-year-old then named the goat. And I was like, okay, this is great. Like, we had a good time with that. And not to say a donation doesn't have the same, but I don't know, there was something a little bit more like gamification, a little more fun behind it. I even see it with my daughter's own school. There's many times that they just run the traditional fundraisers, like it's a day of giving, we're trying to get up to, X dollars. But then they have we're having the fun day. Can you fund the fun day? And
Absolutely.
instead of just, it's like, we need X amount of white shirts for tie dyeing. I'll sponsor the shirts. That sounds great. That I know what it's going towards. I know that what the kids are going to be doing with it. So I think having that variety helps a lot. And I think that's a general across the board for any nonprofit, having a variety of options, because you just don't know what's going to sit with your donor and what they're going to resonate with.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, sorry, I'm going to do a shameless plug really quick, but
go for it.
Like, and again, be brutally honest, but I'll post about these kids don't have water, I don't get anything, but we're doing like a super, or what I think is a super cool fundraiser. And I came up with it last year with a team of people who were traveling to Uganda with me. And so it's called the Chicken Run. And so we're trying to get a chicken for every kid at our school. So we have 255 students, but it's fun for Americans because you get to buy chicken, you get to name the chicken, and we're going to race. Although I have to, spoiler alert, chickens don't really run, but we worked it out so that they race towards a target, which they really walk, but don't tell. But it's really fun, on race day to watch all the kids release their chicken to see which one makes it to the target first, which it turns out they like water more than food. Who knew?
Oh, wow.
Really but, it's just a fun way to get people involved. But then you can come in and tell people about the impact, because these aren't just chickens for these families. They put eggs on the table. A lot of times these families will only eat the things they grow. They don't really know about diversifying nutrition. So, getting protein and eggs. These children, like, I just sent out a Monday motivation email today about Agnes, and Agnes took 20 eggs and she sold them, and she bought another hen, and now she's up to 3 hens, and she bought her own Christmas dress, which is a huge deal, for a third grader, to be able to provide for their own family, needs that they might not be able to provide for them from one chicken. But social media, is how we're driving, those chicken sales and running the footage from last year and, making funny chicken puns. And yes, I bought a lot of chicken suits. So we're going to be wearing chicken suits in a few weeks. So I'm flying over June 1st and we'll be doing that. But yeah, social media has been instrumental in our success. And I'm a little sad because Facebook algorithm is not our friends these days.
No, it's changed a lot recently. I'm like, I don't like this anymore.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to pivot and come up with some new ideas. But
I guess TikTok, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I know. See, that's why I need a TikTok volunteer. I'm too old. I've aged out of that.
I'm like, I don't even what do I post?
But I think I'm gonna have to learn, honestly, to pivot. But yeah,
I'm lucky I get Instagram because it's connected to Facebook. So I'm like, I got this.
Sorry, I think we're hijacking your game.
I think we are.
I'm not shocked.
I'm not either.
Okay, then well, the next one's pretty interesting, and I think because you were talking about like how you also draw people in with like these like fun things like chickens. So there's a common misconception that like because a nonprofit is just mission driven, although like maybe there's like some side quests like chicken running, but it operates on like good vibes rather than actual like strict strategy. So would you say that it's true or false that nonprofits are easier to run than actual businesses?
Easier? Oh, 100% false. If there's 150, we'll go to 150. I mean, never mind. I won't say that. I was going to say we've been making up numbers lately.
I know, right?
So, whatever. Yes, it's much harder, I think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, think about it too. Well, we have like 150 million small nonprofits registered in the US. And yet, I think we have maybe 10 degree programs that even talk about how to run a nonprofit. And that's if anybody even takes the program. And yeah, I mean, I would say 90% of them are just run by the seat of their pants.
And I think, I don't know. I don't know the stats. So I could be entirely wrong because I'm certain that starting small business is not for the faint of heart either. And I bet it's very similar. But you're also, paying people and possibly paying people well. So I think that, makes a huge difference in the sustainability part of it. But I would be curious to know the failure rates. I bet failure rates of nonprofits outpace failure rates of small businesses, if I was guessing.
That's interesting. I've never compared those two.
Yeah.
I know the failure rates of small businesses is right around like 55%. But I've never compared it to nonprofit. That is interesting. I'd have to look at that. I'd be curious.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But if I were guessing, I would bet it's higher. Yeah. But again, that's a guess.
I also look at it this way though, and I'm not saying it's by any means, like you said, easier to start a small business. But if you're running a small business and you have questions and stuff, I feel like there's more support services out there, more people you can turn to like say, hey, what about this? What about this? Not that anybody wouldn't give you advice for a nonprofit, but there's so many like small, especially like legal things, like little things that are so different that you really, you need someone who's knowledgeable in that space to make sure that you're doing things correctly.
Yeah. Well, and I think you mentioned something important, like the skepticism. Like it's really unfortunate that, one bad apple can spoil the whole, because like you said, most of us are just working extremely harder, than you could possibly imagine. And so it's disappointing to have that skepticism, so I think that's an additional complexity that might not be there when you're starting a small business. Like, what are you going to be skeptical of? Like your money laundering for yourself?
I know, right?
So I think that, adds an additional roadblock or challenge, if you will.
Okay. I think like all of what we've been talking about like so far has a lot of been maybe like kind of factually driven because it's like about like nonprofits and like where you can get the money from. But also definitely if you are going to lead a nonprofit, you will have very great character, of course. But like another thing that nonprofits normally like bring to mind is leadership. And normally when we think about leadership, it's very easy to picture the person who gives like a really big speech or takes charge of a big group project, or someone who's always always giving ideas. But sometimes like when you're stepping into a new community and trying to create sustainable change, your initial assumptions might not align with what that community actually needs. So in your situation, do you think that leadership is more about listening than talking, or the other way around?
Yeah, listening, 100%. That's why I live here, and the people who run our programs, they're Ugandan. We have a 100% Ugandan staff. And when I say researcher nonprofits, that's exactly what I mean. Like, you don't need someone coming in from a different country to tell you what your own community needs, but you might need resources. You might need strategic oversight. You might need, some higher level tools than are available to you in, your rural community. But everything we do at Rukundo is driven by the people who live in this community. And I think that's why we've been successful, because that's the only thing, in my opinion, that will lead to real change. No expert, can come in and tell somebody what their lived experience needs.
And maybe similar to the previous one, also about like personal, like what you feel. Do you compassion is a strength, not a weakness? True or false?
True. Yeah.
Yeah.
If there's a nonprofit leader who is not compassionate,
Where
maybe
did the nonprofit come
it's
from?
their career choice.
The sad reality is I have met some.
Oh,
Not at Rukundo.
No, definitely not.
And passion. I mean, I think secondary to that is like, having a real passion for, the work that you're doing.
I also have a quick question. I was just wondering, does Rukundo mean anything specifically?
Yeah, so it means love in the language, the native language that is spoken where we work in Kabale, Uganda. But we tend to have one word for love in the English language, and they have more than one. So specifically, Rukundo is the agape kind of love, which is a love in action that's often inspired, but does not have to be in any way by faith. But it's the doing kind of love, the kind of love you extend to people to lift them up, not like a romantic kind of love.
Very interesting.
And
Okay,
that's
so
why our logo is a little heart.
I guess to wrap up this game, this is like one of the like really big cliches that we hear about school and all the time. But I guess sitting across from someone who actually started an international organization, it'll definitely hit differently. But one person truly can change the world, true or false?
Sure. Yeah. 100%
I have a
true.
great example right here.
Yeah. I mean, 1,000 people are getting our services today. And honestly, I truly think that most of them would be without, if I hadn't taken the steps, to start it all. It's certainly not what I ever thought I would be doing. I was probably a little crazy for even considering it. But yeah, every day I'm reminded of, why.
Amazing. So, Andrea, what do you think the next 10 years is going to look like?
I think when I thought about this, it really boils down to our school motto. And I thought, or sorry, our school mission statement. We have a school motto is above all love one another, which is, falls in with the Rukundo theme. But our school mission statement is to create world changers through the power of high quality education, love in action, and humble service. And so I think, whether we're talking to students in Uganda or students here, if you combine all three of those things together, we've talked about most of those things just during this segment. You have a truly a cliche, as it sounds like, a world changer. And I think our vision is really holistic, sustainable programming that leads to students who are able to not only succeed in their communities, but will hopefully come and help others rise with them. I was writing our annual report recently, and there was a lady named Constance, and she got 1 goat in 2019. And today she has expanded to 7 goats. She's used that manure on her gardens to grow gardens. And she said something, I have cold chills just saying this. The last time I was there, we were recording some segments for social media and other needs. And she said, when I walk through my village now, people say, are you a nurse? Are you a teacher?
Oh, wow.
And she was just an uneducated village woman. And her father, at that time didn't even believe that girls should be educated. But today, from that 1 goat, she is paying school fees for her own daughter, for all of the children that she has. But not only that, when she found that she had more money than what she needed to support the basic necessities of her own family, now she has adopted another child from the community who didn't have a chance to get an education. And that's what we see like over and over and over again. Opportunities are not wasted. When people get opportunities, especially when they've been denied them for quite some time, I think they tend to appreciate them a little more and grasp and hold on to them a little tighter. And and are more willing to extend them, to help other people who are in their situation. And that's just one of, 1,000 stories, that I could tell you, but it was one I think that really exemplifies what we're talking about.
Wow, that's amazing. So, do you have a final message or a piece of sage advice, from us elders here, for our high school students going off to college? What's one final piece of advice that you might leave for them?
Oh goodness.
Oh, right, the tough one at the end.
Yeah, like what is it that you want to leave people with? I mean, I think redefining success. I think so often we're taught that success is, the white picket fence, 2 kids and a dog, and, making a lot of money and, trying to balance all of those things and never having enough. But the most meaningful moments in my life, again, are not something you're going to find on my resume. And I've found the greatest fulfillment in, helping others reach their full potential. And that's not, just something I'm saying. It's the truth. And I think so often we get distracted by the shiny objects, especially when we're younger. And that's, what's being drilled into us. But I think the older you get and the longer you live, the less you realize how those things are so much less important than the things you do to make a lasting difference, in someone's life. And the Rukundo, or the love, that you share, like loving other people well, I still think is one of the most powerful things we can do, whether that's loving your direct neighbor across the street from you, or loving someone in Uganda that you may never get to meet by giving, a chicken or a goat. So just letting that drive like everything we do. And that doesn't mean, you can't strive for success. But just being intentional again about, how you're defining that, and not defining it by societal norms, that may be completely out of touch, especially comparatively speaking, if you're talking about the rest of the world. So yeah, loving more, I guess, showing Rukundo.
That's great advice. Absolutely wonderful. Well, thank you, Andrea. We really appreciate you coming on, sharing all of this information with us. And I know our audience is really going to enjoy it.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the opportunity, and so nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Heidi. Good night.